Now, one of the weirder things I've looked into is reports of wolves in Texas. That's an old 19th century painting, and what you've got there is a saber-toothed cat attacking like a bison or a buffalo, and you have the wolf snarling. I know it's kind of cut up in the way the picture's presented. But the wolf in the picture is what's known as a dire wolf. Now, the dire wolf reportedly became extinct tens and tens of thousands of years ago, but the dire wolf was a very large wolf. You imagine something like today's wolf, but sort of half the size bigger and packing a huge amount of muscle. That's what dire wolves look like. And they had a bite power 125% greater than today's wolves. You know, they would just crush their prey. And there are actually a number of reports in the Dallas, I think it's the Dallas Morning News, but one of the local Dallas reports from 1905, where a rancher just outside Dallas shot two of these large wolves. They were described as being like the size of a small pony. Now, if that's not an exaggeration, you would be talking about probably something like, you know, this high, which would be incredible for a wolf. So one of the theories is that perhaps in certain pockets in the United States, the dire wolf still exists, that it actually never did become extinct. And this sort of then translates into an even more controversial area, that of not just strange unknown wolves, but actually werewolves. Now, when people talk about werewolves, you know, they think of like the traditional folklore or Hollywood imagery of somebody spouting fur and fangs at the full moon and killing a bunch of teenagers in the woods or whatever, you know, that kind of thing. That's sort of the typical scenario that people have. Now, shape-shifting or lycanthropy has traditions that go back thousands of years, the idea that people could transform into wolves. Now, if you look at the body of reports, in the United States today, there are actually literally hundreds of reports of people claim to have seen werewolves. A friend of mine, Linda Godfrey, she's written 5 books on the subject, including The Beast of Bray Road, which some of you may have heard of, and one called Hunting the American Werewolf. And her books are filled with reports of people seeing, for what you would call a werewolf, like a giant wolf standing on its hind legs, just like in that old drawing there. And but Linda hasn't got, I think she may have one case where somebody claims that the creature was actually a human that turned into a wolf. Every single other case, and every single one I've got, is just of a creature that looks like a wolf but walks on 2 legs. Now, the idea that a wolf could live, you know, there could be an unknown type of wolf in the United States which is able to walk on 2 legs and 4 legs sounds totally bizarre. But incredibly, it's actually not impossible, and I'll explain why. That's a creature from known as the Tasmanian wolf, and also the thylacine. And this existed on Australia and Tasmania. Reportedly, the last case, or the last surviving relic, was killed or died in the 1930s. Now, many people claim to have seen the thylacine since the 1930s, and I'm pretty much sure, probably 99% sure, they do still exist. Now, they kind of look like a wolf, perhaps crossed with, almost if you look at the back, it looks like a cross between a wolf and a tiger, and who knows what else. But the thylacine is actually, or was actually, a marsupial, which means its closest living relative was actually a kangaroo, even though it looks dog-like. Now, as I said, they reportedly became extinct in the 1930s, but there are still many reports made today. But what's interesting is that the thylacine could actually rear itself up onto its hind legs and had this strange hopping movement where it could actually hop along on its back legs. And I'll read you a quote from the official Australian government's website on the thylacine. The thylacine was said to have an awkward way of moving, trotting stiffly and not moving particularly quickly. They walked on their toes like a dog, but could also move in a more unusual way, a bipedal hop. The animal would stand upright with its front legs in the air, resting its hind legs on the ground, and using its tail as a support, exactly the way a kangaroo does. Thylacines have been known to hop for short distances in this position. So if you imagine, you know, you're sort of driving or walking down the road late at night in the woods, and you see something like that standing on its hind legs, hopping along with its front limbs like this, glaring at you and snarling, your first thought would be a werewolf, because everybody has that image of a werewolf, like with a long muzzle, the pointed ears, covered in fur, and if it's on four limbs, you can just think it's a wolf. If it's walking towards you or hopping towards you on its back legs, that really changes the situation. So bear in mind that that's what I just read out. That's the official statement of the Australian government. You know, the creature hopped along on its back legs, which just sounds bizarre. It makes me wonder, could there be something similar living in the United States to the thylacine that we don't know about? Some sort of unknown creature similar to the thylacine that could rear itself up on its hind legs, probably for intimidation. Because a lot of people have said when they've seen these so-called werewolves, the creature's actually been on four limbs, and then when the creature has seen the person, it rears itself up. It's kind of like a way to intimidate and frighten the person, and it probably does a good job of doing both. So I don't think, you know, we're dealing with at all, I want to stress, I don't think we're dealing at all with people who sprout hair and fangs and turn into werewolves. I don't think that's even feasible. So the biology that would be needed to transfer the bone and the muscle and everything else from a four-legged animal to a two-legged animal, it's just impossible. But I do think we could be onto something with this theory that there is an unknown type of canine in the forests of the US which may have the ability to rear itself up like the thylacine did. So I hope that's kind of given you a bit of insight into the weird creatures of Texas. And that's just a short list. There are literally dozens and dozens of different ones. And if anybody's got any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Thanks a lot.